listening to Driving Law, a podcast by Kyla about all things related to the rules of the road.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Driving Law. I am Kyla at Acumen Law, and with me, my co-host, Paul Doroshenko.
Good to see you, Kyla. I see you at your desk.
Yeah, you're not really with me. You're in the distillery, and I'm at my desks.
I'm at my other desk. I'm at the bar.
Leaving away, grinding away at the never-ending list of things to do. But do you like my sweater? It's got Wrigley on it.
Oh, cute. I knew that was coming.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got it for Christmas.
Let's see again. Stand up. I want to see.
Well, it's good. It's going to adjust my framing, but...
That's fine.
There you go.
Yeah. Looks like him. Yeah. Its framing was adjusted automatically. These are things you know about. Now you're gigantic.
Now I'm gigantic. Don't look at the wrinkle. There we go. Okay. Back to normal.
Good. I'm glad you're back to normal. Let's get on with our podcast.
Let's get on with our podcast. So this week, the Supreme Court of Canada heard a huge case, major case. We talked about it before when the Quebec Court of Appeal ruled on it. It's the case of Lumumba.
Looking forward to this, and we both have strong feelings about it. And apparently so does do the justices of the Supreme Court of Canada.
Well, I mean, they have strong questions, but, that doesn't necessarily mean what they're thinking. So for those who haven't been listening for that long or who aren't familiar with the case, it involves a man, Mr. Lumumba. He is a black man, and he was pulled over completely arbitrarily by a police officer under the guise of authority that they have in Quebec to conduct random traffic stops.
Repeatedly pulled over.
Yeah, like multiple times in his life.
No offense.
Yeah, not doing anything wrong. Just an innocent dude trying to go about his day, but he kept getting pulled over. Why? Because he's a young black man.
Yes.
Committed the offense of driving while black or brown.
Well, that's what he was asserting, and you could look at the pattern, and the pattern would suggest it, but obviously the police would deny that.
Yes. Although the state didn't deny that, in the sense that they didn't say there wasn't evidence of racial profiling. And they did acknowledge that racial profiling existed. And it was probably the case that he'd been pulled over at least some of those times because of racial profiling.
And this has become a bigger thing because in the U.S. now, they have what are called Kavanaugh stops, where you can pull somebody over on the basis of their ethnicity. You can detain them because they have an accent. You can look at the color of their skin now to elevate something to a suspicion, allowing a detention. And it's called a Kavanaugh stop because U.S. Justice Kavanaugh on the U.S. Supreme Court was the one who, I guess, wrote the decision that permitted this, something that would seem to be completely contrary to the entire history of the equality provisions of their constitution, our constitution, obviously, and the direction of the law. So where are we now in Canada?
Well, the case was heard over 2 days this week at the Supreme Court of Canada. The Attorney General of, I never even summarized what the Quebec Superior Court and then the Quebec Court of Appeal found, which was that, yes, this was an abuse of police authority, and if the power exists, both in statute and at common law, to conduct these random traffic stops, and Ladouceur, the Supreme Court of Canada case that authorized this, was decided way back in the 90s, and here we are 30 years later, and the power is not being used responsibly, it's being abused, then it needs to go away. You can't have that power because the police have demonstrated that whatever justified it in the first place, the highway safety concerns, are outweighed by the clear evidence that there continues to be an abuse of that power through racial profiling.
Yeah. And, I will give the benefit or I should point out that we deal with smart police officers all the time who are not going to do this. But then there's a few police officers out there who will do this. And that is why the concern, why the protection is necessary.
Yeah. You and I have seen it happen. Not once, not twice. A lot more times than
hundreds of times, but that's out of thousands of stops. But it doesn't matter if it's hundreds of times, that's wrong. It's wrong.
One time. It's one time too many. So, Supreme Court of Canada, Attorney General of Quebec started off their arguments, and basically they were like, yeah, I mean, we acknowledge that racial profiling exists, but we're not saying it's a systemic issue. It's just that, racial profiling is bad, but highway safety is more important. And also you can't just assume that everything's racial profiling. So really, if there is a remedy to be done for people who are subjected to this, then it should be done in the context of Section 24(1) of the Charter.
And a lot of it comes down to, I think, a problem of definition. So the police always get all upset when there's a mention of systemic, because they think, oh, that must be taught. That must be something that is something that you're taught to be racist, that you're taught to have these biases. That's not the issue. It's that so many aspects of the system tend to permit this to happen. And so anyway, I'm sorry I interrupted you because I wanted back. You want to talk about the Section 24 analysis.
No, I didn't. That was where it's going to stop. I was just summarizing the Attorney General of Quebec's arguments. I don't think the court was buying it. Like, I didn't get the sense from the judges watching it. It's hard, though, because their hearing was in French. And I don't speak French, so I'm getting the translator. And so I don't get the same inflection that I would get, but you can see their faces and, the questions are revealing. And just
your understanding of French is pretty good. You're listening to it at the same time you're reading it was a oral transcription. Oh yeah, translate. Yeah, it wasn't it.
So I couldn't hear any of the French to know.
But subtitles, if you had subtitles, it'd be fine. You'd be able
if I had subtitles, it'd be great. Yeah. And they used the same person. It was also sometimes confusing because they would use the same person to translate for the judges and the lawyers. So you got the same voice, and if you turn your eyes away from the screen, you don't actually know, is the judge talking or is the lawyer being rhetorical? Anyway, the Supreme Court of Canada judges were riding them pretty hard on this systemic nature of it, saying, there's evidence that racial profiling is systemic, and the AG resisted that. But I mean, we all know it is. And they basically ruled it is anyway previously. So the racial profiling systemic nature of it was a question. They said, if it's a systemic problem, doesn't it require a systemic solution? Like, how can you say that if you have this systemic problem, you have to have an individual solution every single time? Like, could you imagine every person who was pulled over for driving while black or brown went to the court?
Good luck trying to prove it each time, unless you've got a pattern. Like this fact pattern was perfect because you've got somebody who was pulled over repeatedly.
Yeah.
Right. Normally, you don't have that. Normally, what are you looking at? You've got one guy who's pulled over. He's feels that it was discriminatory. The interaction led to that. But good luck persuading a judge of that. And that has been the fundamental problem that we have had. And so if it's got to be a remedy per individual, what are you going to do? You're going to sue every police force, pay for that. The cost of the lawyer is probably not going to cover the damages because of the way the courts award damages in this country.
Harder damages? You're going to get $200 for the 10 minutes of inconvenience?
Yeah.
So the other thing that they pointed out, and I'm glad that they were attuned to this, is that a lot of the bias is subconscious. So police won't even know that they're doing it when they're doing it. And so because it is, coming from this subconscious nature, that raises the question of how do you constrain the power? And the Quebec Attorney General kept saying, well, the power is not without limits. It's not, truly random. They have to be stopping for sobriety or to check a driver's license or mechanical fitness. And it's like, yeah, anybody can just say that. And judges encourage it. Yeah. So, the subconscious nature of it, when you can be like, oh, I see a black person, and then you go, I'm going to stop to check their license, right? Technically, you're acting under the legitimate purpose, but you're only doing it because you're doing it in a racially motivated way.
That guy looks suspicious.
Yeah. But they gave the example of someone coming someone being pulled over and asked where they're coming from. And they produce their license, and the officer says, "Oh, you live in Longueuil, and you're here in Quebec City. Why are you here?" I was like,
That happened to a client of mine. He was in West Vancouver. He lives in Abbotsford. Why are you here? Leading to an unlawful search of his vehicle.
but the problem is that I don't think that the example that was given, like, that would be a situation where it's obvious the officer was going too far. Because you can easily say, "Where are you coming from? Why are you here?" is a question aimed at assessing sobriety. To ask a person whether they've been somewhere where they've been drinking, at a party or at a nightclub or...
But again, it's the initial pullover is the issue. I mean, how many young brown males have we had pulled over in Surrey because they had a nice car? They're driving a, it's like
Yep.
nothing wrong with their driving.
I have
Like 2 in the last month.
2 files right now with the same officer who has pulled over young brown people in Surrey in the middle of the night. They were allegedly speeding and driving dangerously, but the big thing was that when they sped past him in the dark at night, he was able to see that their eyes were glossy. Because I can see somebody's eyes when they drive past me at 90 kilometers an hour in the daylight.
Yeah.
So yeah.
You're driving a Lexus in Surrey, British Columbia, and you're a young brown male, you're going to get pulled over. And you're going to get pulled over again and again and again until you're 40.
So the respondent was represented by a young Black lawyer, which I thought was great because, that's rare that you see young lawyers at the Supreme Court of Canada, rare that you see Black lawyers at the Supreme Court of Canada, and on a case of significance to that community.
Yeah, and I think it's an issue of trust too. If I was that litigant, I would trust someone in that circumstance to have a better understanding of
Yep.
the issue they're facing.
He struggled a bit. Not a lot, but a bit. He was being asked a lot of questions that were, the Attorney General was being asked questions that I think the answer is easy in terms of like on the side we're on, on the side of good. But he was being asked more tough questions about, this is within the context of an administrative piece of legislation. It's highway and traffic safety. And, you're suggesting that there has to be some standard that has to be met. And they use the example of the Little Sisters case, right? The obscenity case, where there was still a standard that had to be met before they could go and seize all the books, right? The standard had to be obscenity. Wrong in Little Sisters, but and there's no standard in the legislation in any province, but in Quebec's legislation specifically. And so I could tell they were trying to get him to say there are observable things that can allow you to form a reasonable suspicion for a traffic stop that fall short of observing an offense. And I mean, you and I could name them off the top of our heads because this is what we deal with every day. Leaving the parking lot of a bar, weaving within the lane, taking too long to start going at a green light, just like the minor things that aren't, driving a little bit under the speed limit when there's no reason for it. The minor things that aren't offenses, but are enough to go, about that driving behavior.
Person appears to be looking down a lot as they're driving. They've got their cell phone in their hand. That's a reason to stop somebody.
Yeah.
Even if it's just to stop them and remind them about the law, which is an appropriate thing to do.
Well, even if they're looking down a lot, they're distracted, and drive without due care and attention is an offense in every province and territory too.
Yeah. I was thinking about actually that standard, the lack of the standard, the low bar, because Brett Kavanaugh was questioning the government's lawyer in the challenge to Donald Trump's application to be able to fire the head of the U.S. Federal Reserve. And the oral arguments were posted. Some of the oral arguments were posted, and Brett Kavanaugh was actually on the side of us here for that one. So he gets tied in twice in the podcast this week. Once for his horrible Kavanaugh stops, and secondly for asking some pretty good questions about, when you set a line like that, you can pretty much expect that it's going to be exceeded. And so sometimes there is no line. The line is expected not in legislation so much. It's expected to be applied by the court. And if you do not set some sort of serious delineation that has a high hurdle a significant bar, you know it's going to be abused. And that was Kavanaugh's argument back to the government lawyer.
Anyway, I talked to some of the people because I know so many of the people that were arguing the case, and there were lots of like great lawyers on the case. I talked to some of the people that I know who were acting for various interveners, and they all feel quite good about it. And they think that the Supreme Court of Canada is going to eliminate the power to do completely arbitrary traffic stops.
Well, I've told you, after the Supreme Court declined to hear the mandatory demand case, mandatory approved screening device demand case, that they would probably take this opportunity to limit the arbitrariness of stops, because it was a not necessarily anticipated that they would refuse to hear that case, but if they are going to permit mandatory demands, they better rein in the power of the police to abuse the stop provisions. And so my thinking was that they were choosing to not accept that case for a hearing on the mandatory demand provisions, because at this point you weren't in a position to persuade the court that it was going to be abused. The abuse would happen at the stop, at the unlawful stop. And so I think they knew that this was coming up. And as I say, I think they were planning on it.
The timing supports your theory because the leave decision was rendered after all of the material would have been submitted for this upcoming hearing.
We knew it was coming. I mean, it was in the media. They know it's coming.
They've read it all. Like it was close enough to the hearing date that they would have read all the materials.
Yeah. So they're looking at it and saying, you know what, government passed law for mandatory breath testing. Sure. It's got its issues, but we're not going to accept a challenge to the law at this point. But we are going to look at the power that the police have been using, the manner in which it's been used, and basically come at the same thing by placing some limits on that. So I think that's where we're headed. I'm cautiously optimistic. Where I was disappointed, I'm cautiously optimistic, and we've been waiting for this for a long time.
I'm also cautiously optimistic, and I hope they get the decision out quickly, one way or the other. I think it's an issue of importance and significance, not just to understanding the law, but also the very basic freedoms that certain groups of people in our society aren't exercising the same way that other people are able to exercise them.
Absolutely. Middle-aged white male, me driving along in a, vehicle that's any vehicle, I'm going to be definitely less likely to be pulled over for a random license check.
As I've said on here before, I used to drive around without my license plate sticker on just to see if I would get pulled over, and I never did.
Back when you had a nap. So.
Yeah, back when you had to have one. Now I can't.
Or we just keep it in her glove box.
Yeah.
If you pulled over, and then she could say, "Oh yeah, no, I put the envelope in my glove box. Oh, I didn't realize there was a sticker in there."
It was an $81 fine with no points, and I figured, it was worth it for the entertainment if I ever did.
You weren't committing some other offense, Kyla.
When would I be committing some other offense?
There's some discussion that goes around in the U.S. It was written in some book at some point where they said the average American commits 3 indictable offenses a day. They just are not prosecuted, and that you can always find a way to prosecute somebody. And this has come up in the discussion again lately because of Trump's using the justice system to go after his perceived enemies.
Yep. Okay, fair enough. You can always find a reason to prosecute people. I can think of things that I have done that I could be prosecuted for more than the license plate sticker.
Had things in your trunk that could have led to some sort of prosecution.
That's the other thing one of my friends wants to do if he ever gets pulled over, is he wants to say to the police, sure, like whatever they ask him to do, yeah, I'll do whatever you ask, just don't look in the trunk.
Yeah, that's a good one. I keep thinking about it. So long as there's nothing in the trunk. Yeah. That's fine. There's no dogs, and you can't open the trunk.
Yeah. Okay, moving on. Speaking of arbitrary police actions, I'm going to tell you about one that I agree with.
Yeah, this is an interesting one. We just found out about this yesterday. You were
Yes.
doing your CBC program, and it popped up in my Google alerts, and this is interesting. Well, it could be abused later on, so let's just set it up now. We don't. It's not a universal approval.
No. But right now, I believe is it the Ridge Meadows RCMP are they're setting up these like radar boxes out in the world. And essentially the purpose of them is to monitor the speeds of vehicles, and it collects this information. It watches vehicles go by, monitors their speeds, compiles that information to tell the police what, generally the speeding patterns are on that road and whether a location is a road that has a problem with people speeding.
And it'll have a bunch of information that they're collecting. The information that they're collecting will tell them what times of the day, how often, the propensity, the speeds, like the types of speeds.
Yeah.
It's going to have a lot of information, but it doesn't collect the information about the specific vehicle or driver or anything like that.
Right.
So not information that they are acquiring for the purpose of further investigative angles. It is more of an engineering investigation. And, for years, we saw those boxes on the side of the road with two tubes running out of it, nailed down to the road. If there was one, they were counting the number of cars. If there was two, they were looking at the speed for coming up with averages. But that wasn't information that was passed on to the police. That was for road engineering purposes. I haven't seen them for a long time. I'm sure that that's been outdated, and that there's better ways of doing it than those old methods. People used to see those things on the road and go out and cut the hoses on them because they thought that this is the cops are out there monitoring us. But this sounds like a fairly reasonable approach for it.
Yeah. I mean, I think, you're not collecting personal information. You're collecting the same information, in fact, less information than you would get if you put a police officer and had them stand there. All it is telling you is patterns that allow you to identify where enforcement should happen. And as you know, and I think I said this to you yesterday, I think there are a lot of ways in which we should defund the police. But this way, traffic enforcement is a role that police should do.
Well, it's again,
And I don't just say that because I make my money off the police.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. You and I saw aftermath of a horrible collision yesterday. When it comes down to serve and protect, there's all sorts of things you can be doing as a police officer. You can be forensically investigating crimes. You may or may not get to where you need to go. It takes a ton of resources to do it. And you might catch somebody and they might end up charged. They might end up convicted. They might deter them from doing it again. That may, serve and protect the community. But if you actually want to meaningfully protect the public, and likely in your life, you will save a life, traffic enforcement, because, people tend to have a heavy foot. And unfortunately, we do need to be trained a little bit to not break the law. And you stop somebody and they get stopped. I mean, as a teenager, I would have kept speeding, but for the fact that I got stopped, and I might be dead, but for the fact that I changed my behavior because I was stopped, not because I was convicted, but because I was stopped. That was the big embarrassment.
I lost my license, so I know exactly.
So did I.
Yeah.
That changed my behavior in 1 month, where I just felt like I had lost every aspect of my freedom and liberty. I couldn't, getting to work was a horrible nightmare. I remember it. I remember that searing pain. And when those young people come to us seeking our assistance to get their license back or to reduce a driving prohibition or something like that, there's a reason. I mean, I started doing that early in my career. I basically invented the parts of the system that we have now in BC. It had existed before, but I changed it because of was so excited about administrative law when I got out of law school that I thrust a change upon them. And it matters to me because I experienced that searing pain. And so as a police officer, you might be thinking to yourself that traffic is, so many officers say traffic's the dead end. It's all a dead end. Like, one person in your group is not going to even likely end up being the chief of police, right? Like somebody's the chief of police for years, and it's filter that person up in the funnel. Everybody, it's not a filter in the funnel, actually. It's everybody else gets scattered away and doing their things. All jobs are a dead end. Like, you can only go so far. Mark Carney is one of the few people who's got to the top, and who else is going to get to be a Mark Carney level skill and knowledge? Somebody has to get there.
He's gone as far as he can go now.
He's gone as far as he can go. It's a dead end for him at this point.
Even prime minister is a dead end job.
I mean, I always think judge, like, people aspire to be a judge, and a judge is a dead end job. Like, that's it.
That's a real dead end job.
Yeah, I know. It's like,
some people are suggesting to me, because Sheila Martin is retiring from the Supreme Court of Canada, so there's going to be a Western Canada vacancy. And I have had so many people say, "Oh, are you putting in an application?" I'm actually not qualified because I'm not functionally bilingual. I suppose I could pick up, a French textbook and reteach myself French, but I used to be. But
you were never qualified to be, but your French was certainly better even 15 years ago when I first met you. But
my French was better than that before we met.
I mean, I would love to see somebody young, your age, get somebody who's interesting, get somebody who's I mean,
with mandatory retirement at 75, that would mean I would be on the Supreme Court of Canada for 35 years. Can you imagine how much damage
Judge St. Pierre is bilingual. I know he's got some French, because he's like the one guy I would think that you could put on there who would be good, but you're going to end up putting some old crotchety person probably. Nah.
You know who I think should apply if he hasn't, and I hope he did? Peter Sankoff.
Peter Sankoff would be great. I don't know how his French is, but he would be
completely bilingual.
Is he? Oh my gosh. Yeah, he'd be a good term.
Western Canada, academic background, cited by them all the time, has argued before them, knows criminal law inside and out, and losing Martin is losing the best criminal law knowledge on the bench. So
yeah, we would be a good draw.
Yep. So I don't know.
For the boxes anyway.
But yeah, I will not be taking that dead end job. 35 years of doing that, no way. Say.
I would not want to do it. It just limits your life so much. It limits your life so much. And I'm not just saying, like, you can't be a jerk, like, that fellow who apparently behaved like a jerk the one time. It just, like, you can't be out in business. You can't be, you're not going to be able to go speak at some things. You can't go to some events. There's just things you cannot do.
When I go out of town sometimes for, like, seminars and stuff, and I get really drunk and go do karaoke and make an ass of myself, I wouldn't be able to do that because
it's a dead end of that. You couldn't have a distiller.
Yep.
And have fantastic products such as sour goose.
Get into ridiculous letter writing battles with people over fantastic products such as sour goose.
Yeah, we have the last thing you would think that you could do is produce a product called Bang On Big Banana.
That probably excludes me already from having done that. Anyway, I will not be joining the Supreme Court of Canada now, ever. I will not apply. I will not be appointed.
You wouldn't get appointed. You're too interesting. They don't appoint people.
I know.
I mean, your legal brain is great.
The committee that makes the recommendation would take one look at my life outside of, black letter law. So yeah, my social media, my my mouth.
Dull enough.
No. So
Sankoff would agree to do it. Yeah, he'd be a good choice.
Yeah.
A lot of the people I would like to see there would never agree to do it.
Yeah, that's the sad thing.
I'm happy with the dead end they're at, or they may have another dead end.
The other suggestion that was made was Len Marchand. And as you and I know, he's working really hard on his French. Remember, we were at that dinner and he was trying to do his whole speech in French? But there's only one reason why an appellate level judge works real hard on their French, Paul.
Yeah, well, he's a young guy, relatively. He'd be a good draw.
Yep. And
I'd rather see a person of color, but we're a multicultural society.
He's First Nations.
Oh, he is. Yeah. Oh, sorry. He'd be a great draw.
first Indigenous Chief Justice.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I forgot about that. I knew that too, and I've seen him speak, and yeah, I knew that.
Anyway, we'll see. We'll see what.
No, I actively forget people when the
Yeah. Let's not actively forget the ridiculous driver of the week. And would you believe it is January 23rd, 2026, and our ridiculous driver is an overpass striker.
welcome to British Columbia.
Yep.
As I say, we should create our overpasses out of the same material that they make Nerf balls and Nerf guns and like that, because each and every one of them is destined to be struck by a truck.
Yep. 2 p.m. Wednesday this week at Highway 99 in Richmond, where there's been overpass strikes before. A guy on a flat deck trailer with an excavator on it crashes into the overpass and then gets out of the car. And what does he do, Paul?
I don't know.
Runs away.
Did he? Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Yep.
So, okay. I have handled many, many, many hit and run investigations, like hundreds of them over the course of my career, and had long conversations with police officers about it. In some cases, long conversations with police officers who later presented on panels with me about how to handle it. And there are reasons that people run.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they run because they've been drinking or they've been using drugs and they don't want that to be detected. Sometimes they run because they shouldn't be driving that vehicle. They don't have the right license. They're not, and sometimes they run because they are so worried about the consequences, even though they're sober, they're properly licensed, but they're so freaked out about the consequences. Or they're not sober and they've heard that the consequences are
The Kingdom of Denmark. How would a man
I going to making choice. Sorry, I had the Supreme Court of Canada hearing on there. It's just like it paused earlier and then I couldn't get it going again. It's just,
But sometimes people they've heard that the consequences are so bad that they think to themselves, I can't take any risk. I got to run.
Yeah.
The thing that flashes through their mind, like it's not a deliberations. The deliberations of, should I stay here and fulfill my lawful duty or shall I run?
I mean, I would say that the third example you gave is probably the reason in this case, because especially how the provincial government brought in all those extra consequences for overpass.
That's my concern. Yeah. They
Motivate them to run.
were saying he was detained. He might have been detained for an hour to write a ticket. Like he might have been only detained a little bit longer because he was because he ran. I mean,
Well, him being detained actually is, I think, because there's no longer the power to arrest in 495 unless certain things need to happen. So I think they have to detain, but it doesn't matter. I mean, they've identified him, and I'm sure the full weight of the BC Transportation Ministry will come upon him.
Yep. So now I'll probably be on the Mike Smith show next week for the overpass strike if you haven't already been on for it. Because it's just it is. I mean, it's trite because it happens so often, but it's something that should never ever happen. Like it is completely 100% easily avoidable. It's got nothing to do with human frailty except human stupidity, I guess. Like it's just, and the damage is always in the hundreds of thousands at a bare minimum.
Yeah.
And it's insured by the Insurance Corporation of British Columbia typically, so it's taxpayers paying it one way or another.
Yay. There's
So what was the date of it that it happened a couple days ago?
Wednesday.
Okay. All right.
So we'll
3
see.
3 weeks into the new year.
Do you want to take a bet on whether it was Chohan Trucking?
Operating out of Bear, Alberta, or now they're Manitoba or the Saskatchewan head office.
I feel like if it was, that would have been in the news stories because,
Yeah, probably would have been. Or it might come out in the later investigations. Stories like this sometimes have some legs.
they do. Anyway, That's our
What really we should be doing is we should be having the pool. We should be starting some sort of gambling ring on when the next overpass strike is going to be.
yes. There's
What it,
we've now committed an indictable offense. To there. Yeah. Free today, starting an illegal gambling ring. We do not have a gaming license yet.
no, and I don't plan on applying for one. And we're not going to actually have a pool outside of just you and I betting over a Coke.
But I have 2 slot machines now, so I'm practically at casino.
Yeah, but both of them are disabled such that you can't gamble with them. So they're for novelty purposes only.
I know.
But if you go to alter them in any way, Kyla, you may be committing an indictable offense.
I will.
Felony in the U.S.
All right, that's our podcast. If you need to reach us related to a driving law issue, you can find us online at vancouvercriminallaw.com or give us a call at 604-685-8889 and tune in next week for another exciting episode of Driving Law.